This is SOSF. Alright, so, some of you who've been listening for a while might remember, I think I talked about this on that lucid dreaming episode. I'm a huge boxing fan. I train, I'm just an amateur, but I love the sweet science. And this one, man, this episode on Ricky Hatton has been on my mind for a while. He's been gone for a minute now, and for whatever reason, I put off doing this one. I don't know why. Sometimes you just gotta let things marinate. But, alright, let's just get right into it. There are fighters, and then there are warriors. And then, in a category all by himself, there was Ricky Hatton, the Hitman. If you were a fight fan in the 2000s, you know exactly who I'm talking about. The guy was a phenomenon. An absolute force of nature. He was this working-class kid from Manchester, England, who became one of the biggest stars in boxing. Not just in the UK, man, but worldwide. He was pure electricity. And then, just recently, on September 14, 2025, he was gone. Found dead at his home. 46 years old. 46. That's not an age, man. That's a kid. And the thing that's just absolutely wild, the part that'll bake your noodle, is that by all accounts, he was doing great. His family, his friends, they all said the same thing. He was in a good place. He was training for a comeback fight in Dubai. His bags were literally packed. He was excited. He had a purpose again. And then, the lights just went out. So what the hell happened? How does a guy who fought his way out of the darkest holes imaginable, a guy who stared down suicide and addiction and came out the other side to become this incredible advocate for mental health, how does that guy just suddenly disappear when everything seems to be looking up? It's a story about the insane pressures of being a world-class athlete, about what happens when the cheering stops and you're left alone with the voice in your own head. It's a story about a guy who was a champion to millions but couldn't always be a champion for himself. This isn't just a boxing story. This goes way deeper. To really get it, you gotta understand where this guy came from. He wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He was from a council estate. That's like the projects in the UK, in a tough part of Manchester. His dad and granddad were soccer players, and Ricky was decent too, but boxing found him. His uncles took him to a fight when he was 14, and that was it. The hook was set. After school, he was working for the family business, laying carpets. Can you picture that? A future world champ on his hands and knees with a carpet knife. There's this crazy story where he almost lost his career before it even started. He sliced 4 of his fingers open with a Stanley knife. Just a freak accident. His dad, probably having a heart attack, was like, "Alright, that's it, you're a salesman now." He was trying to protect his kid's hands, and in doing so, he accidentally saved the tools that would make him a millionaire. It's wild how life works. His amateur career was short but blazing. He was winning British titles left and right. Then he goes to the Youth World Championships in Cuba. He gets to the semi-finals and gets absolutely robbed. It was one of those classic, corrupt boxing decisions. 4 of the 5 judges gave him the fight, but the 5th judge scored it so wide for the other guy that it swung the whole thing. They found out later the dude took a bribe. Imagine you're a young, hungry kid, and you see that. You see the politics and the corruption firsthand. That shaped him, man. It lit a fire under his ass. It created this us against the world mentality. He was just a regular guy from a council estate, and he knew right then he'd never get any favors. He'd have to earn everything the hard way. He was so disgusted he turned pro right after that, at 18. And his style, man, his style was a perfect reflection of his personality. He didn't have a reverse gear. It was just pure, relentless, suffocating pressure. He was a bulldog, a piranha. He wasn't trying to dance around and outpoint you. He was trying to mug you in the center of the ring. His whole philosophy was not a step back. He would literally eat a punch just to get on the inside, where he could unleash hell. He was a master of infighting, just hammering away with hooks and uppercuts, especially to the body. He'd dig into your ribs like he was trying to find buried treasure. It was brutal, but it was thrilling. Fans went nuts for it because they saw themselves in him. They saw that working-class grit, that refusal to quit. But that style, it's a young man's game. It's not built for a long career. The same things that made people love him, the heart, the aggression, the willingness to get hit, were the things that made him vulnerable and put a ton of miles on his body. His career was always destined to be a shooting star. Incredibly bright, incredibly intense, and over way too fast. And this all-or-nothing approach spilled over into his life outside the ring. This is the part that made him a legend. Between fights, the guy would blow up. I mean, he'd pack on 30, 40 pounds. He'd joke about it himself, called himself Ricky Fatton. He'd be in the pub with the fans, drinking pints of Guinness and eating fish and chips. Can you imagine a top-tier athlete doing that today? With the sports scientists and the nutritionists? They'd be crucified by the media. But for Ricky, it just made people love him more. It made him real. He wasn't some untouchable celebrity. He was one of them. He was just a regular dude who happened to be one of the best fighters on the planet. This is why he had the most insane following in sports history. The Barmy Army. Tens of thousands of British fans, regular folks, would save up all their money to fly across the world, take over entire cities, just to watch him fight. When he fought in Vegas, they literally turned the strip into a Hatton wonderland, just thousands of people in the streets, singing his name. It was a cultural movement. This guy from a gritty part of Manchester was their king, and they would follow him into any battle. The absolute peak of all this, his masterpiece, was the fight against Kostya Chu in 2005. Now, you have to understand, Chu was a monster, a Russian-Australian killer who was considered one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. He was a vicious puncher, a master technician. He hadn't really lost in over a decade. Ricky was the massive underdog, fighting in his hometown of Manchester. The arena that night. You can watch the videos. The noise was so loud it was physical. It was 22,000 people trying to will their guy to victory. And Ricky fought the perfect fight. He knew he couldn't outbox this guy from a distance. So he did what he does best. He turned it into a bar fight. A grueling, ugly, war of attrition. He just mauled him. He got inside, leaned on him, hit him low, hit him on the break, whatever it took. He was systematically breaking this legend down, piece by piece, with relentless pressure and a savage body attack. By the later rounds, Teshu was exhausted. He was beat up. After the 11th round, a round where Ricky just poured it on him, Teshu went back to his corner, and his trainer threw in the towel. He quit on the stool. The place erupted like a volcano. Ricky Hatton, the kid from the carpet shop, had done the impossible. He was the champion of the world. He was on top of the mountain. But you know what they say? The bigger you are, the harder you fall. And the fall from that mountain was brutal. After becoming the king, a super fight was the only logical next step. And the biggest name out there was Floyd Pretty Boy Mayweather Jr. So in December 2007, they met in Las Vegas. Undefeated was what they called the fight. The Barmy Army invaded Vegas like nothing anyone had ever seen. It was an ocean of English fans, singing and drinking and creating this insane atmosphere. They basically made the MGM Grand feel like a home fight for Hatton. The fight itself was that classic clash, the pressure fighter against the defensive genius. And for the first few rounds, Ricky was having some success. He was making Floyd uncomfortable, pushing him back, landing some shots. But there was a third man in that ring who changed everything. The referee, Joe Cortez. See, Ricky's entire game plan depended on getting inside and roughing Floyd up, but Cortez would not let him work. Every single time Ricky got close, Cortez would break them up. Immediately. Even when they weren't holding. It was like hiring a lifeguard to officiate a shark attack. It just completely neutered Hatton's offense. You could see the frustration building. Then Cortez takes a point from him for hitting behind the head, and Ricky just loses his cool. Once he got emotional, it was over. Mayweather, being the absolute master that he is, adjusted perfectly. He started timing him, picking him apart with clean, sharp counters. In the 10th round, he lands this perfect check left hook. It was a thing of beauty. It sent Hatton stumbling face first into the turnbuckle and down to the canvas. He got up, because he's got the heart of a lion, but he was done. Floyd jumped on him, and the fight was stopped. His first professional loss. But it wasn't a clean loss in his mind, or in the minds of his fans. It was tainted by the refereeing. It created this nagging what if. What if he'd been allowed to fight his fight? That kind of unresolved feeling, that sense of injustice, it's poison for a competitor's psyche. There's no closure. And according to Ricky himself, that was the night the depression started to creep in. That was the first crack in the armor. He rebuilt, got a couple of wins, and then lined up another mega fight. This time against the other pound-for-pound king, the Filipino phenom, Manny Pacquiao. This was in May 2009. But things were shaky behind the scenes. He had split with his lifelong trainer, Billy Graham, the guy who had been with him since he was a kid. The camp was reportedly a mess. If the Mayweather loss was a slow-acting poison, the Pacquiao fight was a nuclear bomb. It was a total annihilation. The fight lasted less than 6 minutes. Pacquiao was just a different speed, a different level of power. He knocked Hatton down twice in the first round. Then, at the end of the second round, Pacquiao landed one of the most devastating punches in boxing history. A single, short, perfect left hook. It was like a lightning strike. Hatton was unconscious before he even hit the mat. He just went stiff and fell backwards. It was a terrifying knockout. He was out cold for several minutes. That wasn't just a loss. That was an erasure. Everything the Hitman persona was built on, his toughness, his chin, his ability to walk through fire, was vaporized by a single punch. There were no excuses. No controversy. No what-ifs. Just the absolute, brutal finality of being completely and utterly destroyed. According to him, That moment stripped him of his identity. He wasn't the tough guy anymore. He wasn't the warrior. So who was he? And right when he's at his absolute lowest, the entire foundation of his life collapses. He has a massive, bitter falling out with his parents over money. It got so bad, the stories are that he actually got into a physical fight with his own dad in a parking lot. The rift with his old trainer became permanent. So, think about this. In the span of just a few months, he loses his career in the most brutal way imaginable, which erases his identity. Then he loses his family. Then he loses his mentor. He's completely adrift in an ocean of failure and betrayal, with nothing to hold on to. He said later, "If I'm not a fighter, a son, or a student, then what am I?" He felt like he had nothing left to live for. And that's when the darkness really took over. He tried to make one last comeback in 2012, 3 years later. 3 years of hell. He framed it as a shot at redemption, a chance to go out on his own terms. He was back in Manchester, in the same arena where he'd beaten Chu. The place was sold out. The fans were singing his name, desperate for one more magical night. But it was painful to watch. He was a shell of his former self. The speed was gone. The timing was gone. He looked slow. Desperate. He was still tough as hell, but he was just getting picked apart by a solid, but not great, Ukrainian fighter. And then came the moment of the cruelest, most perfect irony. In the 9th round, his opponent landed a picture-perfect left hook to the body, Ricky Hatton's own signature punch, and it dropped him. He was on the canvas, writhing in agony from a liver shot. He couldn't get up. The fight was over. In the ring, heartbroken, tears streaming down his face, he took the microphone and retired for good. It was a definitive, tragic, and deeply human end to an incredible career. The end of his career was the beginning of his toughest fight. Without the structure of training, without the identity of being the Hitman, he fell into a black hole. He was incredibly open about it years later, which is one of the bravest things he ever did. He talked about the severe depression, the drinking, the drug use. In 2010, a tabloid paper posted pictures of him using cocaine, and he checked himself into rehab. But it was even darker than that. He admitted that he tried to kill himself several times. He described sitting alone in the dark with a knife, just crying his eyes out. He said that when he fell out with his parents, he hit rock bottom and he just didn't care if he lived or died. Think about that. This is the guy who was the life and soul of the party. Always smiling, always laughing. But that was the mask. He was putting on a performance because he didn't want to be a burden on anyone. That's a trap so many people, especially men, fall into. The pressure to seem strong on the outside prevents you from getting the help you desperately need on the inside. What pulled him back from the brink? The birth of his daughter. It gave him a reason to live, a reason to fight. He finally went and got professional help. He described this moment where he literally got on his knees in a psychiatrist's office and just begged for help, admitting he couldn't win this battle on his own. That surrender was the first step toward victory. He found a new purpose. He opened his own gym, became a trainer, and started promoting young fighters. And he said he got a bigger buzz from helping one of his fighters buy a car or put a down payment on a house than he ever got from his own world titles. He was giving back. And that evolved into his new identity. He became a powerful, passionate advocate for mental health. He used his own horrific experiences to try and help others. He started speaking out, breaking down the stigma that's so strong in working-class communities and especially in a macho sport like boxing. He became an ambassador for charities. He supported men's mental health groups. And just last year, in March 2025, he was there cutting the ribbon to open a new mental health hospital in Manchester. He took the darkest chapter of his life, the thing that almost killed him, and he weaponized it for good. He was on a new mission, to make sure nobody had to suffer in silence the way he did. So his legacy is this incredible, complicated, two-part story. In the ring, he was this fearless warrior who gave his fans some of the most exciting nights of their lives, a true people's champion. But outside the ring, his real legacy, his most important contribution, came from his vulnerability. By talking about his demons, he gave thousands of other people the courage to face their own. He showed the world that true strength isn't about never getting knocked down. It's about having the guts to admit you're hurt and to ask for help getting back up. Which brings us back to that terrible morning on September 14th. After everything he'd been through, after finding this new purpose, after seeming so happy and focused, why? We may never know the full story. But it's a terrifying reminder that the battle with depression is never really over. It's not a war you win once and then go home. It's a lifelong campaign. It's a beast that you have to fight every single day. And sometimes, even for the toughest warriors, the beast has a good day. His death was a massive shock. The whole sporting world was just gutted. At his funeral, thousands of fans lined the streets of Manchester to say goodbye. His coffin was painted sky blue, the color of his beloved Manchester City Football Club. They drove him past his local pub, past his gym, past the arena where he became a champion. It was an incredible send-off for a guy who was so loved because he was so real. In the end, he was a walking, talking paradox. The ultimate man of the people who felt completely alone. The toughest guy in the room who was fighting a battle he couldn't see. His life was this story of incredible highs and devastating lows, of deafening cheers and profound silence. But the final chapter of his story is still being written. His family started a foundation in his name, using his legacy and the platform he built with his fist to continue his second great fight, the one for mental health. The people's champion is still fighting for the people. His name will no longer just be a symbol of a great boxer, but a symbol of hope for anyone fighting a battle in the dark. And that might be his most important victory. So here's the thing I can't stop thinking about. Is the very same fire that forges a world champion, that insane drive, that all-or-nothing obsession, that ability to ignore pain and push your body and mind to the absolute breaking point, is that the exact same fire that ultimately burns the whole house down? Are the very qualities that make someone a god in the arena the same qualities that make them unable to live a normal life once the roar of the crowd fades to a whisper? And if that's true, what does it say about us, the fans, and our obsession with these modern-day gladiators? Are we just celebrating people on their way to a beautiful, spectacular, and tragic self-destruction? It's something to think about. See you next time.